The next type of discrimination, customer discrimination. For example, what does not buy from black shop. When we talk about customer discrimination, imagine now a white customer who doesn't like to buy from black shop. The shop is run by a black person or have a lot of black workers, because the customer associate the price that he get is like this. P times 1 plus D. D is again the discrimination. So this is P, and if the prejudice is high, let's say 0.9, that's closer to 1, then you start to feel that you've been ripped off by that shop owner simply because you are coming from certain group. That's another way how we can look at this element of discrimination. Let's say the shop owner notice that his customers are not happy coming to his shop because of his black workers, he may reduce the wage of his black workers. That's what this statement try to argue, the effect of this type of customer discrimination. This fourth one is about profiling from data that we have gathered, and then we notice certain trend, relate certain group to certain types of statistic. So this can be across race, religion, or whatever, because this statistic can be depends on the trend that appear from the statistic. For example, from historical record, let's say the data suggests women may quit sooner than men. That's one statistic. So this type of statistic creates what we call statistical discrimination. Actually, racial discrimination also overlap with statistical discrimination in many ways. When people talk about black workers and some sentiment against black workers, that's also can be worse by support from statistical evidence. For example, statistics shows that the black workers are less productive, and you can find studies about this. And that's the statistical discrimination, magnifying further black discrimination. Definitely in gender discrimination against women, there are many things about women that's supported by statistics, and that's creates this type of statistical discrimination. The issue of gender pay gap. Over here we have men's earning function, and below that line is the women's earning function. Many studies do find evidence suggesting that men on average earn more than women, and therefore this can be the earning function. So let's say the level of human capital for women, SF, this is the schooling level for women. So women only gets this much of wage rate as described by this women's earning function. This is the schooling for men. So if man has SM level compared to SF, which is more, man is considered to have more schooling level. So this will be earning for men. And the distance here, this is not because of gender. The difference by this line is the schooling differences. The gap here is because of schooling differences. What is gender gap? Gender gap is when if the average women wage were paid as if she were a man, then this will be the wage rate for that female. Now you can see that the gap here, this gap, that's the gender pay gap. The gap here also tell us the gender pay gap. Why this diagram have to undergo all these steps? Because we want to show sometimes the gap like this line. This is not gender pay gap. This is schooling gap. This is gender pay gap. Okay? Just to note on that. I think I've discussed much of the main points about gender pay gap. The rest are some of the emerging trends. For example, in the book, they talk about how education have reduced the gap between black and white workers, for example. Some policies in the workplace that can improve gender pay gap also have been discussed in the textbook. For example, like this statement, women are better off if they enter occupation that can maintain level of productivity once they enter back into the job market. For example, women give birth, take leave for 3 months. They can be better off if when they come back, they can still maintain the same level of productivity. Let me make a big conclusion for these two chapters. So far, chapter 7 and chapter 9 are about income inequality. And I mentioned in the first session, be careful between these two, equality and equity. Equality of income is not similar to equitable income or equity in income. Islamic economics, the goal of distribution is to achieve equitable distribution of income, not equal distribution. If you say Islam or Islamic economics want to achieve equal distribution, you are very wrong. Equal is communism. So now, what policy can be done